Dilip Kumar, Part 16. Life had to go on, and the story of Ganga Jamuna was developing in my subconscious. It was necessary for me to relaunch my brother Nasir as he was facing a slump in his career after having acted in a few films and also to have my own production house. The subject was such that it needed sound financing to depict it on celluloid in the manner I had visualized. There was no dearth of money in the market, but I knew that I would have to tread carefully and avoid the Shylocks. I knew Shapurji Mistri and Pallonji Mistri quite well. I had met them informally at their homes, and the manner in which the ladies had placed some Persian delicacies on the table when we sat down for tea reminded me of the goodies that always appeared on the table in our house at Peshawar when we had our family get togethers on holidays. They were good, hospitable people, and I had got to know them when they began financially backing K. Asif as he set out to make Mughal-e-Azam. Shapurji heard the story of Ganga Jamna from me and he had no doubts about its viability, but my brother Nasir felt it was not a good idea for me to play an outlaw. He insisted that the public would not accept me joining the dacoits and taking refuge in their lawlessness to get back at the wicked Jamindar who steals his own sister's jewelry and frames theft charges on Ganga's poor and honest mother. I was planning to play the role of Ganga and cast Nasir as Jamna, a policeman. Nasir had strong views on this subject and advised me to think about it. I thought about it and concluded that I would go ahead with the venture since Shapurji was confident about the movie's success. The more I worked on the basic conflict in the script between the brother who has to uphold the law of the country and the brother who flees from the law, which favors the rich and the powerful and unjustly incriminates the poor and the defenseless, the more I felt it was time for me to make a picture that raised some critical issues about the people of rural India who had gained little from the country's independence from foreign rule. The oppressed farmers and tillers of the soil were leading a life of slavery and were being exploited and swindled by the mercenary landlords. The situation has not changed much today, more than half a century after both Mehboob Khan's Mother India and Ganga Jamuna exposed the exploitations of farmers for whom the soil they till and plow is sacred. Mehboob Sahab had made Mother India with a similar mission and The film became a classic study for the Western world of the ruthless manipulations that were prevailed in the long existing money lending system in the rural economy of India. When Mehboob Saab discussed Mother India with me in the early 1950s, I thought it was a brilliant and timely concept and it had to be made at any cost. The role he could offer me was one of the sons of the heroine Nargis, and I pointed out that it would be an incongruous casting after all the romancing she and I had done in earlier films such as Mela and Babul. I felt that it was a great opportunity for Nargis to play the title role, and there was no doubt that she was the apt choice. It was crucial to give her unchallenged positioning in the star cast as the most important character and the pivot of the story. Besides, I was in no mood to dip into intense tragedy again. Mehboob Saab was known for the offbeat casting in his films. He had cast me in a swashbuckling villager's role in On, in total contrast to my public image at the time of a tragedian. He took great pleasure in doing the impossible and reveling in the applause he received when his experiments succeeded. On was a worldwide hit, and he felt triumphant that he had made India's first film in Technicolor. All said and done, I did not agree with him when he wanted to cast me as Nargis' son in Mother India. Coming back to Ganga Jamuna, I told Shapurji about my intention to tour the interior parts of North India, especially in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh first, and then travel all over interior Maharashtra. I had decided to have the dialogue in the dialect I had heard and stored away in my subconscious as a boy squatting in the Mali's kitchen at Deulali. I did not know if it was a UP or a Bihari dialect at that age. It sounded fascinating, and there was a vivid expressiveness about it while conveying raw emotions. The way in which Bihari, the Mali, and his wife Fulva conversed and quarreled was as amusing as it was dramatic. I needed to hear and feel the dialect again with the express purpose of using it in the film. The scenic canvas of rural regions in the states of India, be it in the north or the south, has its own variations and singular attractiveness with vivid reliefs brought about by geographical features and climate changes. I was keen to witness it firsthand. I wanted to breathe the air that the characters Ganga and Jamuna grew up on and also take stock of the pangs of suffering the men who swore by the soil they tilled went through at the hands of the heartless landlords. It is one thing to know it for knowledge's sake, and quite another to get a feel of it. I was in charge not only as a producer and actor, but also as the writer of the screenplay, and I was experiencing a stimulating challenge. In a way, I was very conscious of the fact that I was going to be judged at several levels, and the thought inspired me more than it hassled me. The most wonderful thing about playing Ganga was that it was not difficult at all for me to understand the emotional current of the story, especially the feeling of adoration and protection for the smart younger brother. It took me back to my relationship with my brother Ayub Sahab, who was intellectually ahead of all of us, and I always felt he could have become somebody important in the administration had he not been physically debilitated. I had nourished great aspirations for all the younger siblings too, and never hesitated to put their needs above mine in everything so that they could be educated and fulfill their ambitions. So, Ganga was not unfamiliar to me as a character, unlike in most other films, where I felt as if my own self was on one side and the other personality, the character, was on the other side, and it was imperative for me to bring them together. I knew that my script of Ganga Jamuna had merits for me as an actor. Since the character was on the wrong side of the law, it was important for me to acquaint the viewer with the reasons for his taking to a lawless way of life, and I had to make him pay the penalty for taking to that life. However right he may have been under the circumstances he was caught in, Ganga, I decided, should get no reprieve from the law when he tries to explain that he was the victim of a trap set by the Jamindar and that he could fight the powerful feudal system only by becoming an outlaw. When I was writing the story and the screenplay of Ganga Jamuna, my brother Nasir, for whose comeback the picture was being made, told me I was making a mistake. As mentioned earlier, he felt that people would not like to see me as a bandit and a lawbreaker. I thought about the matter seriously and I decided to go ahead without making any of the changes that friends and well wishers suggested. The film eventually opened to a splendid response and admiring notices. When we were at Pinewood Studios in the UK, sometimes in the summer of 1960, for the technical processing, the technicians in the lab were very impressed and they suggested that we enter the film for the Oscars because it reflected the tyranny of the feudal lords or jamindars in independent India and the intrinsic honesty of the downtrodden farmer despite the poverty and oppression. They were full of praise for the performances, the colorful song sequences, and the rugged rural setting. When Ganga Jamuna was screened at Karlov Vary in Czechoslovakia, Boston, and Cairo, I was besieged by film critics who appreciated the movie and were intrigued by my acting. They were curious to know how much research had gone into it because a film like Ganga Jamuna would have been made after much study and deliberation in their countries. I told them how much I had worked on the script, the characters, the Bhojpuri dialect, the logical conclusion of the story, and so on. Another highlight of the film was the impressive musical score by Naushad Mia, whose folk tunes in the film are popular to this day. It took months of reflection and self questioning to arrive at the climax, but it was well worth the pains taken because I still hear praises from discerning film enthusiasts for Ganga's death scene. The scene was filmed on the sets at a studio at dusk. I took the cameraman V. Baba Saheb into confidence and told him to keep everything ready as there would not be a rehearsal or a second take. I stressed the point that the synchronization between the action and the running camera would have to be perfect. He understood and was absolutely ready. The other unit members had no clue what I was going to do. What I did was my own idea. I took several rounds of the studio's premises, jogging at first and then running. When I felt breathless and I thought that I would just collapse, I entered the sets where Baba Saheb was ready with the camera running to perfection. The scene of Ganga's collapse in his house at the feet of the deity whom his mother worshipped so trustingly and devotedly could not have been achieved in any other way. It was a victory for the law when Ganga succumbs to his bullet wounds, but I wanted to tell the audience that it was Ganga who has achieved a bigger triumph, the moral victory God has given him by fulfilling his objective of establishing his poor mother's innocence and restoring her reputation in the village. The search for the ideal locations for Ganga Jamuna was a new responsibility for me. I am told the task is left nowadays to a producer, designer who create the look of the film on paper, which must be the reason why the films appear so hybrid and amalgamous today. In our times, the director, cameraman, and art director took pains to scout for locations, and for Ganga Jamuna, it was entirely up to me to find the appropriate backdrop for the unfolding of the story. As per the sketches I had made, some of the scenes had to be shot indoors on sets that I had pictured in my mind and had to be built at Kardar Studios and Mehboob Studios, both located in Bombay. It took a month of searching for me to pick a location close to Igatpuri in Maharashtra, about 120 km northeast of Bombay. I visited the place quite by chance while on an outing with Badruddin Qazi, whom you all know as Johnny Walker. It caught my attention at once for its virgin beauty and its unexplored natural ruggedness. I later took along to the location Baba Saheb, the cameraman, and director Nitin Bose, and they were all for it. Little did I know then that I was discovering a locale that would be repeated in several films after Ganga Jamuna was released. The nature of the subject was such that it demanded a location of craggy hills and a valley besides a flowing river that would be skirted by a sloping land covered with tall trees and bushes. Baba Saheb had seen the sketches I had made of the location that he desired and it surprised him recently that there was indeed a place like the one I had drawn for him. For some minutes he stood silently with Nitinda on the hill from where Ganga slides down to seize the villain played by Anwar Hussain and save Dhanno played by Vaijantmala. After gazing the locale for quite some time with his cameraman's eye, he clapped his hands spontaneously in delight and stamped his approval on the spot. It was understood that the valley would provide the backdrop for the villagers' houses and the Jamindar's mansion, which we would have to build. The Jamindar was the villain in the movie. Making Ganga Jamuna was a mammoth exercise at that time. When shooting began for Ganga Jamuna on location, K. Asif was reshooting some of the desert sequences of Mughal e Azam in Rajasthan. I had to endure the scorching heat of the desert with all the heavy armor that I was given to wear for the scenes that Asif had reworked, and fly back to Bombay and travel by car to the Ganga Jamuna location. The makeup material available those days was limited, and it was quite a test for my personal makeup artist to camouflage the suntan and the reddish patches I used to develop due to the metal armor covering my body in the war scenes shot on desert locations. Shapurji, who was the co-producer of Mughal Azam, used to call his sons and his office staff and tell them to imbibe the virtue of ceaseless hard work from me. He used to arrange for me to travel in as much comfort as possible, and the concerned expression I could see on his face reminded me of the pain that would flit across Amma's face when she would see the afternoon sun's impact on my fair skin when I got home after rigorous football practice on the grounds near Metro Cinema during my college days. I enjoyed my long chats with Shapurji, who loved me perhaps no less than his sons. We discussed everything under the sun. While it fascinated me to hear him talk to his sons about the construction business and the money matters they were dealing with ever so facilely, Shapurji often wondered how I was able to cope with the complex and unusual demands of the acting profession. Shapurji was a towering giant in the construction business, and he commanded instant respect from the authorities because of his untainted reputation. He was a man of small build and of medium height, his intrinsic goodness being reflected in the radiance on his gentle face. He visited the location whenever he found time, and at other times he dropped in at my new house I had bought on Pali Hill. Those were the days when Pali Hill, Bandra meant an address to reckon with. There were open spaces and bungalows, and the bungalow I selected was at an elevation strategically commanding a good view from the upper floor. I gave my sisters and brothers a surprise by driving them to the house and opening the main entrance door with a key from my pocket. In one voice, they started asking me whose house was it and how come I had the key. I told them that it was my house from now onwards. The house was big and had enough room for the girls to have the privacy they needed. Life's surprises never cease, really. I was hoping to find my own exclusive space in the house where I could rest when I wanted to or just stay in the room and read. It was important for me to be left alone at times. I was used to being alone from a very early age because I had my own thoughts and fancies, which I did not wish to share. As a child, I enjoyed going out of the house alone, and it often caused panic and got me into trouble, as I noted in earlier chapters. Here, in the large house I had lovingly bought, I found myself often unwillingly dragged into senseless arguments and bickering. I felt completely out of sync with my brothers and sisters who were becoming increasingly concerned only with their comforts and luxuries, which they did not hesitate to ask me to provide. Consequently, I spent more time in the outhouse, and there I felt a sense of relief because it gave me the much needed freedom to pursue my interest in reading and spending quality time with people whose company I truly enjoyed. In the film industry, there was a call for producers' bodies to place a ceiling on actors' assignments sometime in the mid 1960s, if I remember rightly. I knew it would not affect me since I did not work in more than one film at a time, but I felt it was an encroachment on an individual's personal and professional freedom. My decision to move to Madras came at this juncture partly because I wanted to be away from the perennial cacophony of my house, and partly because I could not agree with the Bombay producers' move to restrict the work of actors. There were two very cordial producers in Madras wanting me to star in the Hindi remakes of their Tamil and Telugu hits, and I liked them and the stories they narrated to me. One promised ample scope for humor and comedy, and the other offered me an opportunity to delve into the troubled and suspicious mind of an unfortunate lonely man. The films were B. Nagireddy's Ram or Shyam, released in 1967 and directed by Tapi Chanakya, and P.S. Veerappa's Admi, released in 1968 and directed by A. Bhim Singh. Both were to be made in the city that had captured my heart when I had worked in Paigam. Ram or Shyam started with a bit of turbulence. Vaijayantimala, who was signed to play the lead, upset Nagireddy, the producer, with a tantram that was uncalled for. When she stuck to her stand about something very trivial like a sari or a pair of earrings she had selected and was given to another artist unknowingly by the director's assistant, Reddy politely informed her she was out of the film. In a week's time, I was informed that Wahida Rahman would be replacing Vaijayantimala. The whole episode was misconstrued by Vaijayanti, who, after working with me in 6 films, imagined that I had brought in Wahida because she was my heroine in Dil Diya Dard Liya and Admi. Although shooting for Admi began long before Ram or Shyam mounted the sets, its pace slowed down halfway through the production because the cash flow came in drips and drabs. While I was shooting some hilarious scenes for Ram or Shyam, I had to agree to dub for poignant scenes with Wahida for Admi because Veerappa would send word that some funds had come in and they were in a position to hire a dubbing studio and pay the technicians. Likewise, the editor of Admi used to invite me to take a look at the edited reels, and I spent many evenings after pack up at Nagreddy's Ramorsham in the suits where Admi was being edited. Thank you very much.